Angels Care Home Health, serving Hayes and the surrounding areas, is a Medicare-certified home health agency providing quality skilled nursing and restorative therapy services to patients in their homes.
I love the nurses that come and see me.
Angels Care is there to help 24 hours a day, and all services are covered 100% by Medicare for patients who are eligible.
Since I've learned about Angel Care, I would recommend them to anybody.
Angels Care Home Health. We serve patients.
Eagle Community Television presents Community Connection with your host, Mike Cooper.
Hello and welcome again to Community Connection from Eagle Community Television. Thanks for watching. Thanks as always to the producer of our series, editor, and the guy behind the camera, Jeff Durall. We're at the City Commission chambers this morning with 111th District Representative Eber Phelps and still Hayes City Commissioner in the Commission chambers as we visit with Representative Phelps about, let's start, Eber, if we could, on maybe some reflection of your second term as City Commissioner.
You know, a lot of people have asked me that same question about, if I like being back on the City Commission, or at least when I came back on. And of course the answer to that is a resounding yes, very much. As a matter of fact, I had to really kind of weigh that when it came time to, really thinking about running for the legislature again, because I've enjoyed being back on the commission. I don't want to say I forgot how much I enjoyed it from the first time around, but the fact of the matter is I realized that this is really a great venue to represent your community and really to see the results of a lot of your decisions that you make. And as you all know, this is really a great community. The volunteerism in this community is just something else. And I've noticed the other commissioners have echoed that they said they didn't realize how many people just get involved in this community and how passionate they are. And subsequently, this second tenure on the City Commission has just been really rewarding. It was a continuation of a lot of things that started back when I was on the commission the first time, such as our purchase of the R9 Ranch, and to see that nearly coming to fruition, where we have actually, got our applications in. It's kind of out of our hands, so to speak, but we've made the application, for the water transfer. And I was hoping I'd still be on the commission when that became a reality, but such be the fact that I am going to the legislature, but I will be keeping a close eye on that. And then our conservation efforts, water conservation efforts have continued, and also we've seen our recycling program grow in its participation as well. So it's been a really kind of a review, and also a lot of new things. Obviously the wastewater treatment plant that's forthcoming, and just our schedule that we're on as far as maintaining our infrastructure has just been really a joy to watch that all take place.
And we're going to visit with the Assistant City Manager, Jacob Woods, here for our next segment on Community Connection later.
We'll save the tough questions for him. Okay?
I'll give you the softball stuff,
all right.
Okay?
Sounds good.
So did you ever expect that you wouldn't complete your time as Commissioner? Because I know at one time in your visit with Gary Shorman on the Eagle Television Forum, you said that there was a point at which you suddenly thought, wait a minute, this isn't right.
I believe that if you would ask me a month or so before I filed, if I was planning to run for the state legislature, I was very content with being back in the city government. And by the way, I would point out that part of that positive feeling I have about being on the commission, as you mentioned Jacob Wood, I would include all the staff here at City Hall, and then the 4 people that I serve on this commission with very, I would say, astute individuals as far as really wanting to do the best thing for this community of Hayes and doing their homework. So it's been a real joy to kind of be in that environment with great staff, great community, and so forth. And so it was really kind of a very comfortable position to be in, serving in city government. But it just seemed to me that what we were seeing in Topeka was the need for a really big makeover. And that was really reaffirmed to me as I went door-to-door campaigning. People were paying attention that maybe hadn't in the past, but they were seeing the revenue reports come in, coming in short every month. They were, continually hearing the current administration talk about how great things were, and they were going, well, not really, not according to the, job creation figures that we were seeing, employment figures, and also just the new business startups. And then we saw all the revenue shortages coming in. So one thing that really stood out as I went door-to-door campaigning or any forum was that people were really aware. But leading up to that, I was getting that sensation as well as I talked to people. And so it looked like things were going to continue down that road. And I think all over the state you had people maybe thinking that. And that's probably why some people got involved and decided to run to see if they couldn't at least, as I've been saying, try to stop things from getting worse. That's going to be very difficult, but at the same time, I think the city commission, the 4 remaining commissioners are very focused and very on track, and so I was comfortable leaving in that regard, but at the same time I'm going to miss it.
So, Eber, what about, what's the process for your replacement then?
The city commissioners and myself, we decided that they would take applications, and I believe that was a similar format they did 20 years ago, actually, when I left the commission. And so anybody interested could put an application in online if they so desired, or bring it into City Hall. They took those applications up until the December 30th, I believe it was. And what will happen as we move forward, commissioners will review those applications. And by the way, there's about 6 or 7, which is pretty good to see that kind of interest. What they will then do is apparently go through a process where one of the commissioners will move that they accept the application for replacing me of so-and-so. And if it gets a second, they can vote on it. If it doesn't get a second, it'll die for a lack of a second, and another commissioner might, make another motion. Because one thing I will say, very legitimate candidates, very involved in the community. I've looked over their applications, and so there's no shortage of quality candidates that have put their name in the hat. But what will happen is my last meeting will be on the 7th, I believe it is. The 5th, excuse me, the 5th. And then the next meeting, the commissioners will go through that process of making those motions to see who will be the replacement. And then they'll serve out my term, which will end a year from next November.
And then they would stand for re-election if they so choose.
If they so desire, they could file, and of course the filing deadline would be sometime in January, I believe.
Glad to see too that the staff has put together a reception for you, a Thursday from 4 to 6, open to the public again.
I was very humbled by that, and I jokingly have said that 20 years ago when my term ended, they said, "Here's your hat, what's your hurry?" But this time they are doing things a little bit differently, and they're really good about, I think, recognizing employees within the city structure as well. I've been to a number of receptions here for people retiring from the police department, the fire department, public works department, and so forth. And it's really gratifying to hear some of the stories of some of those people that served the city of Hays for 25 and 30 years. Real troopers, and done an excellent job.
Well, yeah, and dedicated, I think,
dedicated,
is
yes.
certainly a thread that runs through the entire system of government in the city of Hays.
Absolutely. We are well managed, and our department heads, one of the best interviews I've seen on your program was when you interviewed the wastewater treatment superintendent, Roger Morkey, who I was listening to him and I thought, is this guy a scientist as well, and does a great job running that treatment plant, which is why we really need to replace it, because that's 1950s technology, and he is keeping up with the times as best he can given the facility there. So it's been there so many years, maybe one upgrade, it's time to replace it. But he's reflective of a lot of the people that we have throughout our police and fire chiefs, do a wonderful job, and Parks Department and so forth. And so we're well managed in those areas. And then the people, that actually get out and do the yeoman's work out there is just remarkable.
Well, and all the people we talk to, Eber, as a side note, that Jeff and I visit with that are in these various areas of city government and service, usually are very nervous or hesitant about being able to talk, but once they get into the discussion of their particular field, they are experts, and it comes across as very knowledgeable and dedicated.
The city manager here is very supportive of continuing education and training. As a city commissioner, we constantly get emails or notifications of various trainings that's available, whether it be with the Kansas League of Municipalities. The commissioner's been real good about participating in water conservation programs. I've gone several years in a row now to the New Mexico Land and Water Conference, which really, to me, is it's a small venue, a small conference, but very informative. And so I think that support for training goes with all our staff people as well, and our people that are out there in the field. The city manager is very supportive of our people getting continuous training. And so you keep up with the times, keep up with the latest.
Let's move to the 2017 Kansas legislature now. Let's go to the initial steps, first of all. What do you credit your election to?
We made a commitment. When I say we, I had a wonderful group of people working with me. That included my wife, the Ellis County Democrat Party, and then a number of young people, high school and college age, that wanted to get involved. And they were constantly, at the ready to go out, whether it be knock on doors, put out signs, or whatever the case may be. And then this day and age, you have to have a little bit of that old. You have to go out and knock on doors. And that was one thing I thought about, what you're going to have to do to really cover Hays. And it's called getting out as soon as possible, which in our case was shortly, like the Memorial, Labor Day weekend, excuse me. And, it was 100 degrees. And we ended up the last night before the election in the dark, in the rain. And my thought was that I don't want to leave any stone unturned, as they say. But we put a remarkable effort into the door-to-door activity. That, coupled with just the constant new information going on my Facebook page, had young people involved. And at the very beginning we talked about web page, Facebook, and they all were pretty much on the same thought process that we would have a very active Facebook page, and it turned out to be a very active page. And the drawback on the web page was that we just didn't have really somebody that could full-time, be changing that. Whereas with Facebook, I'd be quoted, and 10 seconds later it was on Facebook. So, at any rate, that I think it was the effort that we put in and the commitment we made. We spent all our money. We handed out every brochure that we had, and put out most of the signs. I kept a few because they disappear, whether it be wind or whatever the case may be, during a campaign. So we used up all our resources. And then that, and as I mentioned before, the awareness that I came across in talking to people at their door, they, and I think every election people are talking about change, but this particular case, I didn't have to do a lot of talking at the doorstep. People really opened up, and it was how it was affecting them, whether they had kids, their children in the K-12 system, or their grandmother was, in need of home and community-based services in her home. So it was a plethora of issues, and they have seen those deteriorate. And when I talk to even the agencies, such as the Area Agency on Aging, or your developmental disability groups, with the number of people on waiting lists, and the inability to pay people a wage that would keep them on, they'd have young people that maybe during their studies at Fort Hays went to work for developmental services and wanted to work there. They loved the work, they loved being involved in that type of activity. But with continuous cuts, and we've seen that in education as well, people leaving the field, administrators going to other states, So that knowledge was out there, and I just sensed it already in September that people were not liking what they were seeing or hearing going on in Topeka, especially as it came to our finances, because they could also look at the states around us. And they're going, "You're not talking about this in Nebraska or Colorado, you know. Oklahoma's struggling a little bit, but Iowa, South Dakota." So it was a very well, I think, informed constituency, at least as far as what was going on in our state.
Representative Eber Phelps, our community connection. We'll get to the 2017 legislature and the first order of business when our community connection returns on Eagle Community Television.
Angels Care Home Health, serving Hayes and the surrounding areas, is a Medicare-certified home health agency providing quality skilled nursing and restorative therapy services to patients in their homes.
My Angel Care physical therapist taught me how to do exercises safely.
Angels Care is there to help 24 hours a day, and all services are covered 100% by Medicare for patients who are eligible.
It gives us independence in our home.
Angels Care Home Health. We serve patients.
Welcome back to our Community Connection. We're in City Commission chambers with 111th District Representative Eber Phelps, and we talk about the Kansas legislature for 2017. And first of all, just on a personal note, our thanks to Joe Glassman Corporation, for the flexibility that he has offered you to be able to commit to the time involved and the necessary changes that you have to make in your work schedule for the legislative activities.
Absolutely, yes. He's always been very supportive, and of course, we look back a number of years ago, he actually served in the City Commission as well.
Yeah, very community involved throughout his term.
And in most recent years, he's been on the Technical Education Authority, you know, which is under the umbrella of the regents. But he's also very supportive of anybody in our organization. We have a school board member within our employ. We've got another gentleman that serves on the Planning and Zoning Commission. So we have, you know, and there's many businesses in Hayes, I believe, that are very supportive of their people being involved in the community in some way, not necessarily elective office in all cases, but the fact of the matter is we have a number of people, you know, that serve on with the chamber ambassadors and the downtown group, and it's all, I think, a result of their employers actually wanting them to be involved and have a little say-so on which direction we're going.
We have had, in years past, great times visiting with you, Janice Lee, and of course our friend Dan Johnson about legislative activities. When you left the legislature, we had a balanced budget, we had money in the bank, highways were funded, schools were funded, mental health facilities received funding, State Arts Commission, sensible gun laws, sense of priorities, compromise, and over the last few years, compromise became a dirty word.
I believe you are correct on that. Of course, the administration came in, the Brownback administration came in, and he had his plan, and in that last election, he even got more support for his plan, which I think most economists will tell you has not worked out very well. I always pointed this out too. You mentioned Dan Johnson, who became one of my closest friends and one of the most interesting people I served in the legislature with. And when we talked about collaboration and cooperation, you know, partisanship never even entered the situation. You know, Dan and Janice and I, we were always talking about issues that, you know, were important, say, to Fort Hays or Hays Medical Center or the oil and gas industry and obviously agriculture, the driving engine of the state. And it was always kind of a thing that, you know, let's do what's best for this area, or even, you know, sometimes in a broader sense, what's best for the state. And that was the overall, I think, attitude in the legislature. I just had a discussion last night where I talked about my second term in the legislature. I was a ranking member, the ranking Democrat, on the insurance committee. And when we'd work a bill in that committee, after the meeting, myself and the vice chair, Republican Don Meyer from El Dorado, we'd either go to my office or go to his office, and we'd work on the bill brief. You know, it was kind of while it was fresh in your mind, go get that little thing done. We had a form and we filled in, we put in there who testified in favor and what the opposition was, if there were any amendments, the fiscal note and so forth. And so we'd get that done. And it wasn't, that too was a bipartisan effort. In fact, Don would even say, well, he said, I think my caucus is going to like this part and yours might not, so you might not want to, you might want to mention that. And it was just, in the end, we were trying to figure out how to best explain this bill, how to make sure everybody got the information. And it was, and the chair of the committee was the same way. I might come back to my office and he'd be sitting there, and talk about the schedule for the coming week. So there was this constant, I believe, just bipartisan, collaborative effort. I especially saw that come to a close, so to speak, in my last 2 years there, where, people just kind of were doing their own thing and not really wanting to be, part of a bigger thing, do something really good for the state. And I think the governor, did a lot to perpetuate that and kind of, get people on his side. And obviously, this election, I think, showed that the people were not happy with that direction.
The Mainstream Coalition, a group that was put together several years ago to address some of the issues and something that we reference on a regular basis, sent out their update as of December. And right at the top, the headline says, "Fix the Budget First." The Mainstream Coalition, Kansas organizations ranging from economists to child care advocates, representatives from healthcare, construction, came together to propose a solution to Kansas woes. And the headline, "Fix the Budget First."
That's been the message by a number of groups that are really kind of, I guess you could say, overlooking their, initial needs, so to speak, and realizing that everything is tied to the budget. And subsequently, they're saying, you got to fix this budget before you can worry about perhaps our funding or our policy or our programs. And that's been a kind of an overwhelming theme. There's a lot of groups out there that have kind of come together and at least are throwing things out for discussion. The Mainstream Coalition, for instance, they came out with their list of ideas. And what was sad was they came out with that, and the spokesperson for the governor's office right away came out and just started ripping it apart. And I looked at it from the standpoint is it's a working document. It's kind of an opening salvo. It's the start of things, because up to that point, the governor will not reveal anything that he's talking about. We won't find that out until we have the State of the State address on the night of the 10th, I believe, or the afternoon of the 10th. And so we at least have groups. I've got one here for the, the Children's Action Group and the Healthy Kansas Alliance. They're all coming out with just some ideas. And it's like, here's some things that need to be discussed, whether it be expanding CanCare, our Medicaid program here in the state of Kansas, or looking at the way we're funding different things, building highways, whatever the case may be. But they want to get things out and have more open discussion than what they've seen in the last 2 years. And that was another thing that kind of kept reverberating as I went door to door and so forth. People kind of, their sense was that there was just too much kind of behind the closed doors type decisions being made, and they did not like that. They liked the more open discussion like you see here in the City Commission chamber. And so I think that this Mainstream Coalition, I admire those groups. The Mainstream Coalition, interestingly enough, one of the real leaders of that group is Dwayne Gosen, who was the budget director for the Graves administration, the Sebelius administration, and Parkinson. And during one of my forums or somewhere during the campaign, somebody asked me, if you were the governor, what would be the first thing you'd do? If you were elected governor, what would be the first thing you'd do? I said, I'd pick up the phone and say, Mr. Gosen, do you need a job?
Yeah.
And I mean, you could, somebody might think I was doing that tongue in cheek. I'm dead serious. This man is very astute, very understanding of the budget, understands out-year spending, understands the whole revenue stream, understands the effects of a tax cut, for instance. And so that 2012 tax cut was so ill prepared as far as the people voting for it, or a lot of people voting for it, and it was very ill conceived because a lot of people, I don't think, realized the consequences of it, the law of unintended consequences. And in this particular case, there's glowing examples of unintended consequences.
Well, and Ed Flente, the professor from Wichita State University, with his famous three-legged stool, he told us before the event even happened that you cut away one of those legs, things are going to topple.
I was listening to one of my very last radio report from 2012, May whatever of 2012.
You saved those.
At the end of the session, and I was listening to it, and I literally pretty much outlined everything that's happened right now. Now, I quickly point out, I wasn't the budget genius, but I listened to people like Dwayne Gosen, I listened to Alan Conroy, the chief budget analyst, and other people in legislative research. Chris Courtwright came, that was an expert on taxes. And I listened to those and I go, boy, this isn't going to work. And subsequently, I just pretty much repeated what I heard them say or what I read. Ed Flente, excuse me. I read his articles on that, and I said, this all makes sense. And obviously, it played out. Unfortunately, some of the people, as we say in the second floor office of the Capitol, refused to listen to that. Dale Dennis in the Department of Education. If anybody, if nothing else, listen to this man.
The fact that you're going back to the legislature now means that, as the Mainstream Update Coalition said, now the adults will have to make the hard choices, raising taxes on those who can pay for them, lowering sales tax, especially on food, so those who cannot afford them get relief, protecting children, seniors, and those unable to care for themselves. Proud promise our American society has made and met for decades under both Republican and Democratic leaderships.
Well, you're absolutely right in that, that was always kind of the priorities that everybody had, I think up until the last few years. And I think there were still some people there. I mean, well, I know there's people there now that still feel that way, but there just wasn't enough of them to make it happen because they put a lot of faith in this whole 2012 tax program, thinking that it's just going to take time and it's going to work. And we just keep, as Tennessee Ernie Ford would say, another day older and deeper in debt. Subsequently, we have elderly people on waiting lists, and those are the people that left a legacy of a really great state to raise a family, educate your children, and good roads and everything. That's their legacy, and now here they are in a position to where they sometimes need extra help. They can't help themselves, and we're putting them on a waiting list. To me, that's just, it's just unfathomable, and it's just unacceptable.
Well, now about 30% of the legislators are going to be coming in as the first time. You think maybe that with your past experience serving in the legislature, maybe you could mentor some of these people as opposed to some of the lobbyists and people that would get in their ear? Maybe you could be a calming force, perhaps?
I would hope so. I will say this, I've already gotten calls from new people that I met when I was down for the leadership elections, especially in my caucus. A number of people, had heard that I'd been there for a number of years. So they realize right now that, you're a minority leader and the office staff, they're real busy. So they say, well, I call this Phelps guy up and see what he has to say. Because it's kind of like running for the city commission or the state. You're running on these issues, and then you get to the reality of serving in office. In the city government case, you've got to vote on a snow blade, In the meantime, you're going, hey, where's all this economic development stuff? And the legislature's a little bit like that, too. You run on a lot of key issues, and then all the things come into play like, do I have to hire a secretary? How do I pick my office and all that? So it's just, new people are a little bit impatient.
Tell me about, in our final minute here, Eber, the committees that you're going to be on.
A little different scene for me this time around. I'll be on the Appropriations Committee, previous legislative years, I was always on the Education Committee, in fact, for I think 14 years. But I'm going to be in Appropriations Committee, which will be a new venture for me. Obviously, the proving ground and learning about budgets and everything started right here, so that gives me a heads up, plus my years in the legislature. Then I'm going to be on the I'll be the ranking member on the Higher Education Budget Committee, which is good, having the higher education in our committee, Fort Hays, NCK, and so forth. And then I'm on the local government committee, and they just said, well, you were just mayor and you're on the commission, so let's go on to a local government. So not sure exactly what we'll be dealing with in that committee. Obviously, the Appropriations Committee is going to be heavily immersed in the whole budget situation.
I know you're going to set up a link to be able to contact you from citizens who want to give you their input. You've already gotten the input door to door, and on a regular basis, you're going to want to hear from people.
Oh, absolutely. And I should have come in here with that information, but I finally found out my office number, 43 South, I believe is what it is. I'm on the lower floor.
Oh, we'll find you, don't worry.
But I love that area down there, because when I first went in the legislature, that was all just storage and so forth. Now it's where your visitor center is at one end, and now you've got IT and the media down there, and then a number of legislative offices, plus legislative research, the document room. So it's quite a handy place to have an office. And then I don't know what my phone number is there, but you can call the switchboard, I guess, and get a hold of me.
We'll find you.
Absolutely.
Congratulations, Eber.
Thank you.
Best wishes for the new direction for the Kansas legislature.
I hope we get off to a good start, and I think that what I'm hearing is really good. The speaker, and I know the chairman of the Appropriations Committee, they would like to go in and as quickly as possible deal with the budget, especially in the area of the loophole, the LLC local, I want to say the corporation budget loophole thing, and we get that taken care of. But I hope that's part of a comprehensive tax package, and that they don't just piecemeal and do little things at a time. I think it needs a total overhaul.
Back to the mainstream coalition again. We must support our legislators as they navigate the shoals Brownback has laid for us. Eber Phelps, 111th District Representative, and our Community Connection.
Angels Care Home Health, serving Hays and the surrounding areas, is a Medicare-certified home health agency providing quality skilled nursing and restorative therapy services to patients in their homes.
My Angel Care physical therapist taught me how to do exercises safely.
Angels Care is there to help 24 hours a day, and all services are covered 100% by Medicare for patients who are eligible.
It gives us independence in our home.
Angels Care Home Health. We serve patients.